The Minnesota Timberwolves seemingly flipped the script on the Western Conference Finals in Game 3 after dominating the Thunder most of the way through. This game felt like a statement, and one that could possibly turn the tides of this series. A huge part of that win was how much Minnesota's bench stepped up. Before the fourth quarter, where both teams' third stringers checked in for garbage time, Minnesota held a 37 to 14 point bench point advantage in Game 3. That bench production came in full force again in Game 4. However, Anthony Edwards and Julius Randle completely failed to show up to this one. The Thunder are now one game away from their first finals appearance since 2012, and Minnesota's season is basically over. Let's talk about it. Hello everybody, welcome to Rusty Bucket. Subscribe to the channel and drop a like on this video, and check us out over on Spotify and Apple Podcasts if you would like to enjoy this as an audio-only experience. I was certain going into this game that we were going to get a very close matchup no matter what. I did think that OKC was going to win. However, based on the energy that Minnesota played with and based on the desperation of the Thunder, I figured A, Minnesota wouldn't be as good in this one, and B, OKC would not be nearly as bad, so we should be getting a close one. And that we did, and I think we even got a borderline classic game. There was a lot of weird stuff in this one to maybe make it not that, but a damn good one nonetheless. So with that out of the way, let's talk about this first quarter, where both teams came out of the gate doing really well, primarily just because of one individual player. For Minnesota, it was Jaden McDaniels who scored 10 points on 5 of 6 shooting in the first quarter, including getting 2 and 1s. This one here coming after Rudy Gobert blocked Chet on a dunk attempt after he passed up a 3 and drove inside. The ball ends up in McDaniels' hands, and he takes it coast to coast and splits between the two defenders to get to the rim for the layup, but not before the ball took a few trips around the rim. Minnesota's bench was also cooking. Naz Reid, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and Donte DiVincenzo all hit some big three-pointers in the first quarter, and Donte even got a really big floater to drop, and they looked ready just like they were in Game 3. Meanwhile, Ant didn't even shoot the ball until the final 40 seconds of the quarter. His first bucket of the game came from getting fouled on a drive and getting the continuation for an and one. He split both defenders to find the gap, and he was hit on his way to the basket, hoping to cause him to miss, but that was a very easy one. For OKC, it was J-Dub who got hot early, hitting a pair of three-pointers as well as a mid-range pull-up, which is big because that mid-range pull-up was non-existent for him in Game 3. But SGA, after a quiet start to the first, really turned it up in the second half of the quarter. He was comfortably getting to his spots early on. Here, he pulls off a beautiful half spin to get into a mid-range fader around the free throw line, hitting it over Donte DiVincenzo, just looking very comfortable, which is a great sign for OKC. He finishes the quarter with 13 points on 5 of 6 shooting from outside. Just 5 of 6 shooting. I think he hit 1 3. Isaiah Joe also hit his first three-pointer, as well as got a nice finish around the rim around a couple of defenders, which was an encouraging sign because he was completely ass in Game 3. OKC also won the turnover battle in this quarter and in this game all around. In fact, Minnesota had 7 turnovers in the first quarter after getting just 10 in Game 3, but the Wolves were the ones that were turning defense into offense more successfully this time around, so it was overall a high-scoring quarter, despite the fact that there was some pretty intense defense being played on both sides. OKC leads 37-30 going into the second. Once again, Chris Finch went with Terrence Shannon Jr. to open the second quarter for an offensive spark, and once again, he did exactly that. He made an immediate impact. He hit a corner 3, he got to the free throw line on a fast break, and just like last game, he got a super impressive coast-to-coast finish on the break. He's a legit player, dude, and his spark was really huge here, but probably not as big as it was in Game 2, because that shit was just demoralizing because OKC already had a terrible first quarter. But Minnesota managed to do well offensively without Anthony Edwards on the floor. Reid hit a really impressive reverse layup. Nickeil Alexander-Walker hit a pair of threes and a floater to give him 8 points in the first quarter and 11 overall in the half. He's been great in this series. He was 2 for 9 in game 1, which is terrible, but he had 17 on 5 for 8 shooting as the only real silver lining in their game 2 loss, and he also went 3 for 4 from outside in that one, and in game 3 he had 12 points on 5 of 9 shooting and 2 of 4 from outside. He now has 11 at halftime, and that gives them a rather significant boost. Though I was impressed with Minnesota's bench offense, I do want to highlight this play from OKC just because it perfectly illustrates why they are such a terrifying and dominant defense. They are constantly playing a game of chicken, playing between the player and the passing lane. It just makes the players paranoid, looking over their shoulder and thus making mistakes because they're hesitating. They do not commit to helping on Randle here until he gets just a little too close to the rim, and then they, on a dime, just triple him, make him throw a difficult pass that is hard for Shannon Jr. to corral, and he pulls up a bad out-of-rhythm 3 over Chet when he had already recovered. So it wasn't a good shot. Great defense there from the Thunder. And you contrast this to Minnesota's defense when Rudy Gobert was not on the floor, and you'll see why Minnesota has issues balancing both sides of the ball. Like, seriously, look at how wide open the paint is whenever Gobert isn't on the floor. It's like Reed doesn't exist. This would be why Gobert played 30 plus minutes in this one, on top of the fact that he was much better offensively than normal. As a result, OKC managed to continue to hold on to the lead. However, with that moment without Gobert on the floor, Kenrich Williams also had some buckets in the second quarter, a mid-range pull-up as well as a corner three-pointer. So far, dude's been good for them, and it says a lot about how damn good the Thunder are that he didn't even need to be good. Like, he's not even a regular playoff rotation guy, but they can still throw him in there and have an immediate impact. Chet also hit a 3, which is great. I do hate how much that has felt like a rarity lately, but at the very least, he hit them, and he hit another 3 in this one. It felt like both of the 3s that he hit were at very pivotal moments in terms of the momentum of the game. So 2 very impactful 3s. These teams continued to score despite great defense, but they did it in completely opposite ways. By halftime, Randle and Ant only have 9 points combined, while SGA and J-Dub had 36 points combined. It's been entirely on the bench mob for Minnesota and entirely on their 2 lead creators for OKC. The Thunder only lead by 8 despite the fact that your stars are playing this poorly, so if you're the Wolves, you're hoping going into this next half that the bench is going to continue to cook, but your stars are going to elevate their play, and suddenly you'll have enough to win. But didn't really quite get there. The third quarter featured a much more aggressive Anthony Edwards, and it did work out pretty well at the start, but then he went right back to not being aggressive after making a couple of really nice drives. Like, he went back-to-back right at the paint. One time he got a wide-open layup, and the other one he set up Mike Conley for a wide-open corner 3, but then after that, OKC ripped him twice on back-to-back drive attempts. So just kind of lost the effort there. However, his best play in this game in general did come at the very end of the third quarter, where he found a little bit more aggression again. The elevation from Ant on this drive is so impressive as he hangs in the air longer than anyone on the Thunder can, but equally impressive is the level of control he maintains despite the awkward angle and driving through traffic. Unfortunately, he has yet to find his jumper, so up through the 3 quarters, Ant has not hit a jump shot yet. All of his buckets have been in the paint or at the free throw line. Rudy Gobert also got into the double digits scoring the ball, which is a huge luxury for Minnesota. Hell, they're 5-1 in these playoffs when he scores over 6 points, let alone double figures. They're 2-0 when he does that. And much of this, along with a lot of the time where he's looked better as a finisher, is him just seeming to realize that he's a big man. He handles himself really well on this drive here, which is an area where he often struggles and looks completely inept, but he pretty easily holds onto the ball here and dunks it all over Hartenstein. Like, genuinely a great move from him for real. This dunk sparked a run for Minnesota where they started to look like the better team for a long stretch there, but it did take a couple of minutes to actually get the game game tied up, but it finally came after back-to-back corner threes from Donte DiVincenzo, this one tying the game up at 79, and it was terrible defense on both of those shots from the Thunder. However, they would respond with a 7-0 run, including this shot, a tough mid-range pull-up from Wallace off of an inbound with 4 seconds to bail them out. And this is actually his second midi of the quarter, which, he was 1 for 6 in the first half before that. So both of those shots were huge. Alex Caruso also hit a pair of threes, one at the start of the quarter and one at the very end. And to wrap a bow on this quarter, SGA displays his mid-range mastery as he has all game by getting Reed with this filthy hesitation dribble before leaning in to bank the shot off the glass. This gives OKC a 5-point lead going into the fourth quarter, 90-85. Nickeil Alexander-Walker continued to kill it going into the fourth quarter. He would end up finishing this game with a playoff career high. This drive right here results in his second really impressive finish in the half. He also got a huge layup late in the game off of an offensive rebound when they desperately needed those points. Speaking of, offensive rebounding was a huge thing throughout this entire game, but especially in the fourth quarter. With no SGA early into the fourth, OKC needed to get offense where they could, so these extra opportunities really made a big difference. After J-Dub missed his off-ball layup off of the drive, Chet would get a putback dunk. He also hit a 3 earlier, and Dub continued to score it well, so OKC managed to remain ahead before Shea checked in, and when he did, he would immediately go to work. This is a shot that he can get to whenever he wants. He is one of the best mid-range shooters in the history of basketball, and the consistency in which he hits this shot is why he's so damn great. Keeping up with the stars for Minnesota, well, Randle barely touched the floor in the fourth quarter. In fact, I believe, let's see, let me double check this. He played 4 minutes. I think he played for like 15 seconds at the end of the fourth just because he got checked in to rebound late. That was it, though. Chris Finch was done with his shit. He chose to close with Nickeil Alexander-Walker as well as Donte DiVincenzo, given that they were both shooting the ball exceptionally well. And speaking of that, I don't know why OKC kept defending Donte like he's a non-shooter. I know his three-point percentage has been bad in these playoffs. I know he's been disappointing as a shooter, like 100% undeniably that's the case. However, he's earned enough of a reputation to not be getting left wide open for warm-up corner three-pointers. Like, seriously, look at how open this man is. I don't understand how this happened like 5 times in this game. Minnesota started hitting a lot of threes in general. Rudy made a great read to kick it out to McDaniels on the short roll in the corner, and Ant hit a heavily contested pull-up 3 over Chet Holmgren, his only jump shot of the entire game. The Wolves continued to inch closer and closer to that lead, but they never managed to cross the actual line into leading. OKC has allowed Minnesota to tie the game once and get it within a shot or two a handful of times. However, they wouldn't let them get any further than that. Anytime it got super close, OKC went on a run. And this time, J-Dub ended up being the hero for the Thunder in this fourth quarter as he hit a ton of jump shots, a really difficult off-balance midi, as well as a pair of threes. Also one that made it a 7-point game in the last 3 minutes. And this 3 out of the corner was massive. He was clutch as hell in this one, for real. Chet would block McDaniels on a spin layup as he attempted to cut the lead to 2, putting the ball back in OKC's hands to put the game away. However, SGA would turn the ball over. Ant would take a pull-up 3 on the break, which missed, but Nah gets the offensive board and finds McDaniels for a corner 3, so it is now just a 2-point ball game. Minnesota doesn't double SGA after the inbound pass after this play. As a result, he manages to get the ball cross court, and he burns 9 seconds of the clock before getting fouled. And this is a really, really crucial mistake for the Wolves because they possibly could have gotten back into this one with just a little bit more clock to burn. With a 4-point deficit, Donte DiVincenzo gets a quick layup and misses it, but Gobert would put it back in for 2. Minnesota forces OKC to use their last timeout by defending an inbound play really well. However, SGA gets sent back to the line. but he did split a pair of them, which is a huge opportunity for the Minnesota Timberwolves. However, Mark Daigneault decided that he was going to be a fucking dork about this, and he fouled up 3. This lost them a game against Denver, so I was very wary of it, but it did end up working out this time. Nas hit both of his free throws, then Shea hit his 2 free throws, and Minnesota is now out of time, so off of an inbound, Ant gets fouled going up the floor, which burns a further 3 seconds on the clock. Both teams changed lineups a comical amount of times here for the sake of rebounding versus offense versus defense, just nonstop every damn free throw. There were 2 substitutions, it felt like. And both teams, and it did matter because, as I said, rebounding was a huge factor. Offensive rebounding was a huge factor as they finished, both teams, with 19 offensive rebounds apiece. But Ant would intentionally miss his last free throw. Shea would get the board, fall down, and throw the ball away to try and avoid the foul and just burn the clock. But it would go out of bounds, and a fan would touch the ball with 0.6 seconds left on the clock, which is kind of a weird gray area. So now there ended up being a debate about how much time should be on the clock. They end up giving 0.3, which I guess is what they assumed would have been on the clock if the fan didn't touch it. But how exactly do you, to what discretion is that type of thing? I don't know. I don't know if it matters. 0.6 inbounding from where Minnesota did. It's basically impossible to get a shot off, but I'm curious to see what led to that decision from the refs, because it's not something that I've seen before, or at the very least not something that I remember seeing before, not in that context. But OKC wins 128-126. They now hold a 3-1 series lead, meaning that their path to the finals is all but secure. For some notes on the Minnesota Timberwolves, this is a devastating loss here. To get this type of game out of Nickeil Alexander-Walker, out of Dante DiVincenzo, hell, Naz Reid had 11 and Terrence Shannon had 9, both of them really efficient. They scored 64 bench points, and they lost the game. They doubled their bench production from the previous game. Or no, that would be 74. Math is hard. But yeah, tons of scoring from them, as much as you could possibly ask for. Meanwhile, OKC got 10 from Caruso, 5 from Kenrich Williams, 7 from Kaysen, and 5 from Jalen Williams, Isaiah Joe. So 27-64 paint scoring advantage, or bench scoring advantage. That's absolutely crazy to lose a game like that. Julius Randle did yet another disappearing act. Him and J-Dub both. They either play great or they play terrible in this series, because he was a disappearing act in game 2, and he was great in game 3, and he was great in game 1, and now he's a disappearing act again in game 4. I think J-Dub had the exact inverse of that, but he had 5 points on 1 for 7 shooting, along with 5 turnovers, and as I mentioned, did not see the floor for much of that fourth quarter, did not close the game for them. Ant's 3-point shot did yet another disappearing act. I feel like he's had multiple games where it just seems like he cannot shoot threes anymore, which is really weird. He was 1 for 9 in game 2, and then he had this 1 for 6, 1 for 5, 1 for 7 in this one. So 1 for 7 in that one, 1 for 9 in that game 2. That's not good, man. That's really, really not good. Even if he did have a good game 2 overall. But seems like whenever Ant has a bad game, that's why, because he usually can get downhill. That's not something he has a huge issue with, even with the Thunder having really good rim protection. Just rough. I need to get more than 13 shots from him, and I need to see more aggression. It's just not enough. Even if he ramped it up after taking 1 shot in the first quarter, and even if his bench plus McDaniels were doing good so that they were still in it after that first quarter, if Ant was also hitting some shots early on, they potentially could have taken a really big lead. Instead, he was just super passive because they didn't need him to start scoring the ball. But by the time they did need him to start scoring the ball, it was already kind of too little too late. Jaden McDaniels also scored 22 points. Rudy Gobert was also pretty good on offense. 13 points is the third most he has scored in this entire postseason. On top of that, he grabbed 7 offensive rebounds, which I believe is the most. He even had some good reads. He had 3 assists in that one. I highlighted the short roll pass to McDaniels for a huge 3. Like, all that stuff was great. Everybody besides for Mike Conley outside of the stars did really well. I mean, I would say everyone except for Naz Reid dramatically exceeded their expectations. Hell, Terrence Shannon Jr., you got that scoring burst again. A dude who is at the bottom of the scouting report, you managed to get that out of him a second time. You managed to get a good offensive game from Gobert and McDaniels, who are your 2 starters who have the biggest significance and sway in terms of how much them scoring the ball helps their team. If Rudy is scoring the ball, it means that defensively he can be out there more because he's not hurting their offense as much. And same can be said for McDaniels, even if he's more likely to play 30 plus minutes regardless. One way or the other, everybody showed up for Minnesota except for Anthony Edwards, except for Julius Randle, and except for Mike Conley. And Conley's a role player who played less than 20 minutes, so that's fine. He's allowed to not be great. But to get this out of everyone else, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, after the first game, has been so great in this series, after being pretty bad in the first 2 rounds of the playoffs. Dante DiVincenzo, really good game in this one, and he was good in the last one too. Like, you can't ask for more out of your core here. They also, as a team, collectively barely won the 3-point battle, which is usually something that is their significant strength, their significant path toward success. Because I know for a fact they outshot them in game 3, and I believe they also had more threes on a better percentage in the first 2 games as well. I could be misremembering that one. But they hit 6 more 3-pointers on 4 less attempts in game 3, where in this one they only hit 2 more 3-pointers while attempting 4 more than the Thunder did. So 4 less makes and 6 more attempts by contrast the last time. 21 turnovers, which more than doubles their figure from game 3. However, it's hard to say that's the fault of everybody else when Randle and Ant had 10 of them combined. Each of them had 5 turnovers. I'm not one to blame games on stars and stars alone. In fact, I think that default choice that so many fans do, and to a lesser extent commentators, but still commentators very often, like just acting like if a star has a bad game, that is all that matters. But in this case, those 2 not showing up is why they lost. It is all that matters. They basically did everything else as well as they could have. If Ant and Randle showed up, and I don't even mean necessarily dominating, if they even had subpar games instead of bad ones, then I think they win this game, and it opens the door for them winning this series instead of their season basically being over. It's possible to make 3-1 comebacks, but no. I don't think this is going to be one of them. For some notes on the Thunder, not a lot here because they basically won this game by executing the game plan the same way that they always do, so I'm not too shocked by this. But once again, you get a huge SGA, J-Dub, and Chet game like they did in game 2. Those 3 combined didn't even score as much as Shea did in game 2. In game 3, they combined in game 3, not as much as Shea did in game 2. Basically a lot less fucking points than they got this time around. But Shea had 40, Chet had 21, and J-Dub had 34, giving them 95. Is that the right math? Yeah, 95 points combined. Christ almighty. J-Dub had 34, 5 assists, 3 steals, 13 for 24 from the field, 6 for 9 from 3 with a 68% true shooting percentage. It would be nice if you could get a more consistent J-Dub. However, you will take this game here. He's either been ass or amazing in this series, which is disappointing, but it does help that at least there's also amazing and not just ass. Shea with 49 and 10, 1 rebound shy of the triple-double. He had the exact opposite mentality of Anthony Edwards in this in this game. He shot the ball 30 fucking times, and he hit 13 of 30 of them. He also hit 12 of his 14 free throw attempts, and before you cry like a baby, 6 of those free throw attempts were late in the game as they were playing the foul game. Minnesota, that is, and sending him to the line. The Thunder were able to get it to him each time, and he hit 5 of those 6 free throws, I believe. So otherwise, 35 points on 8 free throw attempts before that. That's great. Great game from him. And I also think he did grift on one of the shots he got fouled on, like blatantly, and shouldn't have been called. It happens. Not going to act like the rest of his game was bad because of that. It would be Chet, 20 points, 9 for 14 from the field, 2 for 4 from outside, 71% true shooting, 3 blocks as well, and all 3 of them were crucial. As I mentioned earlier, I also felt like both of his 3-pointers were very pivotal in terms of the momentum shifting at certain points in this game, and I don't love how much I've come to doubt his 3-point shot. That's probably been, I don't know if I want to say probably, other than J-Dub's inconsistency, his 3-ball kind of disappearing has been the biggest catalyst in their offense being disappointing when it has been in these playoffs. But he was good in this game. He was great in game 2, and hopefully he can keep having these scoring games, because if he's more regularly crossing this 20-point threshold, they're all the more scary. Shea and Dub also were getting comfortable from mid-range again, which was completely out of the equation in game 3. A big reason why Rudy Gobert was able to play so much in that one, or was not able to play so much in that game 2, rather, is because the Thunder were just hitting every damn mid-range shot. So even if he was stopping them from getting to the basket, the Thunder were still good inside the arc and still scoring the ball inside the arc. But in game 3, SGA and Dub shot a combined 1 for 9 from mid-range. But this time around, they go 10 for 19, a huge night and day difference, and it made their offense all the better. Isaiah Hartenstein only played 16 minutes in this one, and I think that's primarily because OKC was trying to pull Rudy Gobert away from the rim. It did work out pretty well, but Gobert still had a great rim presence regardless the whole time. Cason Wallace's ability to shoot 2 for 9 in a game and still be a massive positive needs to be studied. He seriously just some big ass shots. Those mid-range shots in the third quarter were like, again, some plays where momentum could have shifted one way, and he prevented that. Lou Dort took 3 3-pointers in 30 minutes. I love to see that. Don't just give him the ball every time he's open, and he shouldn't just take it every time he's open. I did appreciate that. He also got, I don't remember which defender it was, might have been McDaniels, but he also got 2 free throws off of a foul grift, which was a hell of a thing to see from him. A big Caruso game. He played the 3rd most minutes, hit his 3-pointers, played good defense as he always does. Never any complaints about Alex Caruso, but yeah, like I said, there's not much to say about them otherwise. They did what they're supposed to. They held on all the way through. I don't even know if they gave up a lead at any point. I think Minnesota might have scored the first point, but that might have been the only time they had a lead. They also didn't get rattled when things were going poorly in this one, as they did in game 3. And now all they have to do is go home and close it out and get a good breather before the finals. Wouldn't shock me if the Wolves were able to win that game 5, but probably not. Probably not. This series is probably over, and yeah, that's rough, buddy. But like I said, after game 2, didn't feel like it had changed after game 3. The Thunder are the better team. It's as simple as that. The Thunder are just better, and that's why they won, and that's why they'll probably win the championship. Probably. But that's it. Thank you for watching. Shout out to Rudy for editing this one, and goodbye.